Right now, all over the world, Jews are being assaulted. The justification given being that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. This, of course, is not true. But many white supremacists and anti-Semites claim that we're carrying out the ancient cherem, or ban, commanded in the Torah, in passages like Deuteronomy 20, 10-18. When you approach a town to attack it, you shall offer it terms of peace. If it responds peaceably and lets you in, all the people present there shall serve you at forced labor. If it does not surrender to you, but would join battle with you, you shall lay siege to it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword. You may, however, take as your booty the women, the children, the livestock, and everything in the town, all its spoil, and enjoy the use of the spoil of your enemy, which the Lord your God gives you. Thus you shall deal with all towns that lie very far from you, towns that do not belong to nations hereabout. The towns of the latter peoples, however, which the Lord your God is giving you as a heritage, you shall not let a soul remain alive. No, you must proscribe them, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you, lest they lead you into doing all the abhorrent things that they have done for their gods, and you stand guilty before the Lord your God. Let us take a closer look at what Jewish law actually says about this. Based on passages like this one, rabbinic law holds that when Israel was at war with the 7 Canaanite nations, whom God had judged unfit to remain in the land, they were required to offer every city terms of peace. Jewish law expands on this to give the 7 nations 3 choices. Leave, the preferred option. 2, to accept the 7 Noahide laws and stay. Or 3, stay and fight. Many modern scholars read verse 15 as referring back to verse 10, meaning that Israel was not to offer terms of peace to the 7 Canaanite nations at all, but to place them all under the ban immediately. That is not, however, how Judaism reads verse 15. Our rabbis teach that this verse refers back to verse 14. If the city chose the 3rd option, to fight, they were to be placed under cherem, marked for destruction, and no captives taken. But every city, even those of the 7 nations, was first offered terms of peace, as verse 10 specifies. The Rambam supports this traditional interpretation by citing the Ramban supports this traditional interpretation by citing Deuteronomy 2:26, where Israel offered terms of peace to Sihon, king of the Amorites, one of the 7 nations marked for cherem. In any case, the Torah is not a self-interpreting document. It was meant to be read in community, and according to Jewish law, even the 7 nations marked for cherem were to be offered terms of peace. That is how we read it. Of the 7 nations offered these 3 choices, only the Girgashites chose the first option, to leave. And according to tradition, God gave them good land in Africa. That is why they're not listed in Deuteronomy 10:17. The only people who sought terms of peace with Israel, according to Joshua 9, were the Gibeonites, and then through deception. Perhaps they didn't want to accept the moral laws of the Torah, listed in Judaism today as no idolatry, no blasphemy, no murder, no forbidden sexual relations, no stealing, no undue cruelty to animals, and the positive obligation to establish courts of justice. Or perhaps they simply did not believe that Israel would offer peace terms to the 7 Canaanite nations at all, or couldn't trust us to be faithful to them. Either way, the Gibeonites were spared. They regularly sent young men to serve Israel's army during Joshua's time, and when the temple was later built, they became temple servants, or netinim in Hebrew. In Ezra and Nehemiah, we learn that many of them joined the Jews returning to the land of Israel from Babylon in the 6th century BCE. But most of the nations of Canaan chose the 3rd option, to fight, and so were placed under cherem. Now, what does cherem mean, actually, in practice? The erasure of a national identity. Consider a modern analogy, the defeat of Nazi Germany. At the end of World War II, Nazi Germany was completely wiped out. Does that mean that every last German was killed? Of course not. Most estimates put German military deaths at around 5.3 million, with roughly, give or take, 2 million civilian deaths. The total German population in 1946 was approximately 65.3 million, including 12.9 million surviving soldiers, meaning more German soldiers survived the war than died in it. And yet we can accurately say that Nazi Germany was completely obliterated. By that we mean the Nazi leadership was killed or removed, Nazi symbols and statues were torn down, and the party itself was banned. Did every German wake up on VE Day, May 8th, 1945, and suddenly renounce National Socialism? No, that took years of reconstruction and re-education. But it worked. Today, Germany is one of the leading nations of the EU and the Western world. If you actually read the book of Joshua, you discover that in one passage, Joshua may put a whole city under cherem and destroy it entirely. Yet a few chapters later, those same people reappear. This confuses modern Western scholars, but the Bible must be read in light of its ancient Near Eastern context. This is Semitic hyperbole. Examples abound in the Bible, throughout the ancient Near East, and even in the modern Arab world. If you've had at least a year of Hebrew study, you're welcome to join our live Thursday class, meets on Thursdays right now, where currently we're reading Joshua in light of its ancient Near Eastern context and rabbinic tradition. Now, by the time you hear this video, we might have moved on to another book, but it's a lot of fun and you would really like it if you want to brush up on your biblical Hebrew. Okay, now, despite the Semitic hyperbole, Canaanite culture was eventually wiped out, and the Canaanites themselves assimilated into Israel or the surrounding nations. A modern reader might ask, what about the Palestinians? Now, the answer is that there was no ancient nation or people called Palestinian. The Palestinian national identity is a modern construct, largely a Cold War era KGB creation from the 1960s, designed to give a nationalist framing to Muslim jihadis in the land who could not accept the existence of a Jewish state. Rather than appeal to Islamic law, which forbids such accommodation, they understood that the West would more readily accept a nationalist uprising against Israel than an openly jihadist one. But I digress. So how then are we to apply this week's Torah portion, which includes Deuteronomy 20, 10-18? First, the Torah commanded cherem only for those 7 nations. Those nations no longer exist, and therefore there is no commandment to declare cherem on the Arabs in our land today. Furthermore, according to the Rambam, a 12th century rabbi, only the Sanhedrin, or a king, may declare cherem. Today we have neither. There is therefore no basis in Jewish law for any kind of mass genocide against Palestinian nationalists in Gaza. Even though Hamas is hell-bent on destroying us, to the detriment of their own population, going so far as to use women and children as human shields, the Arab population of Gaza has actually increased since October 7th, 2023. That's not how any genocide in human history has ever looked. In a real genocide, population numbers fall by the millions, as in the Holocaust, the Cambodian killing fields, or the Armenian genocide. The charge of genocide is simply the latest excuse to fuel the latent anti-Semitism that has always infected the world, especially in Europe. What we do see in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority is the ultimate example of a people so enemy-centered that their entire existence is organized around destroying us, even at the cost of untold suffering to their own people. The brave men and women of the IDF, against whom the world spreads blood libels, are our children, our neighbors, our students, the people we live and work with every day. I speak as an Israeli Jew. They fight under strict rules of engagement, requiring special measures to avoid civilian casualties, even though most Palestinian civilians supported the mass rape and slaughter of October 7th. Some of my students have returned from Gaza, reporting that in areas where they forcibly evacuated civilians, every single house contained weapons, explosives, ammunition, and often shoulder-fired rocket launchers. When some Jewish hostages from October 7th managed to escape their captors, it was ordinary Palestinian civilians who spotted them, recaptured them, and returned them to their jihadi handlers to be tortured and raped again and again. The whole world turns a blind eye to this while condemning us in universities and legislatures and courts, on social media and in the streets where genocidal chants are regularly hurled at Jews. But frankly, I see the hand of God in all of this. Jews are learning who our true friends really are in this world. And it's often not who we assumed were our real friends. And more Jews are making Aliyah from the West. Our answer is to put our trust in God, who gave us his Torah, and is doing remarkable things through Israel, through whom the whole world will ultimately be blessed. And so, when I step back and look at the full picture, I'm actually filled with hope. The Jewish people have faced Pharaoh, Haman, the Inquisition, and Adolf Hitler, and we are still here. Every empire that tried to destroy us is in the history books. While we are still dancing at our weddings and celebrating at our bar mitzvahs. I just came from a beautiful wedding from one of our jiu-jitsu students last week. The God who brought us out of Egypt is the same God who brought us back to this land in 1948, who gave us Jerusalem in 1967, and who is doing miracles in Israel today that the nightly news simply will not cover. Breakthroughs in medicine, agriculture, technology, and yes, in the spiritual awakening happening right now among Jews and Arabs alike in this land. The slanders will pass, they always do, but the covenant God made with Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov is eternal. So rather than being discouraged by the noise, God-fearing people everywhere should return to the moral standards of the Bible and to a real relationship with God. I'm speaking to Jews and Christians here. The same God who said, "I will bless those who bless you," is still keeping that promise today. And that is very good news, not just for Israel, but for the whole world. May God richly bless your study of his Torah.